Hello everyone, Cap here. It's been requested that I do a disassembly video on this chrome toggle. This is the model that we don't see very often. It's very rare because of its differences, and yeah, we just don't see this thing very often. So I'm going to be pulling this thing apart for another gentleman so that it can be replated, so Chris can work his magic on it. He just asked me to clean it and service it prior to that. It's in pretty good shape already. He just wants it to be preserved in the best way possible for years to come, and replating will certainly do that. A few differences with this model compared to the regular production model. The dial appears to be shorter. I'm not sure if it actually is or not. I don't have an F4 or a D model on hand to measure it real quick, but I do have this one. I'll have to check this measurement later. This one comes out to be 1.029 inches, so it just looks like it's a little bit shorter than the other ones. Could be, could not be. Anyways, so that's one of the differences, I think. And then another obvious difference is the actuating rod at the base. It works in the same way as the other regular production model, but it's built a little bit differently. We can't really see it that well right here, but it's basically just a rod end with a little tiny ball on it, and then the ball inside the toggle lever pivots about it. So the same function, but a little bit different of a design. The next design difference is the visible adjustment spring, kind of like the regular production Fat Boy models, the 195s. And the next difference is the mechanical stop apparatus built into the adjustment dial. It's just got a raised tab on it, so it stops with axial movement. Stops at 9, and then it stops over at 1, like so. This is a little bit different than the prototype serial toggle, where it has this mechanical stop in the form of a washer, an aluminum washer, that's plugged into the bottom of the dial. Both of the serial toggles that I've worked on have had this aluminum washer badly corroded and dysfunctional. Aluminum's a poor choice for a wet shaving razor, so that's probably why it remained a prototype and never went into production. Just kind of a poor design. The toggles in general, yeah, they're cool, heavy, unique razors, but the design is absolutely terrible. These things are notorious for mechanical seizure, bad pitting on the toggle levers, this receiving cup, underside of the bottom plate, and inside these areas here. These models are known for pretty bad pitting, so they're kind of a nightmare to work on as far as a mechanical and replating standpoint goes. So anyways, like I might have mentioned, there's no patent information on these that I can find anyways. There's no related patents or pertinent information that I can find to be useful to get this thing taken apart. So today is going to be kind of a freestyle session. I've disassembled other Gillette models before without patent information, and all has went well, so I don't suspect running into any issues. Don't worry, I won't break this thing apart if I feel I can't disassemble it. It's like I said, it's a rare model, so I'm really not in the place to be whacking this thing with a hammer if I don't know what to do. So anyways, there's not going to be any breaks in this video, no fancy editing or anything like that, so just kind of bear with me, and we'll get this going. So, like you guys have seen in my other videos, wood clamps, most of the Gillette models have the same diameter of a handle, so I like to use these for pretty much every model I work on. So the disassembly is going to start in the same fashion as the regular production models. I'm going to drive this retaining pin out. It has a splined end and a smooth end. If you do this by yourself, by chance, make sure that you drive from the smooth end, driving the splines out. You don't want to do it the other way. Much harder. So I'm not going to put this in the vise. I'm just going to kind of prop it up in my wood clamp here. There's no need to clamp this down because it's just driving this pin out. So what I like to do, I like to take a little bit of lubricating oil on a toothpick, put it right over the top of the pin so it can seep in. Just helps me out with mechanical friction. And then I'll just take a little pin here that is the same diameter. Give it a light tap, light couple of taps, and you'll see that the pin has come out with the splines headed out first. I'm already seeing some verdigris oxidation inside these splines. You probably won't be able to see it, but that's a good thing. We want to get that cleaned out because verdigris is bad for plated brass. So anyways, once I get this pin started out, I like to get it enough to where I can just barely grab onto it. This little pin gets stuck in there sometimes because it's the same diameter. So I just kind of like to grab onto that splined pin and kind of press down on the lever with my thumb, and that pin slides right out. Release a little bit of tension. Alright, get this stuff out of the way. Now as we can see, like I mentioned, this actuating rod is built a little bit differently than the regular production models. Same function, it just has a different design. So that's kind of interesting to see. Hopefully you can see that okay. And the lever, it has what appears to be not a ball, this is very interesting, but a nipple of sorts. It looked like a ball when I first inspected it. This is actually just a little poppet. Very, very interesting. Again, same function, just different design. And I can see a spring down inside of the lever here. I don't know if I'll be able to get it out. A lot of times, yeah, that's thinner too. A lot of times these springs get seized in there, but I can usually get them out. Sometimes they have to stay in there though. I can already tell that this spring is much smaller than the regular models. It's probably not going to come out for me. Sometimes a few cycles in the ultrasonic cleaner will get this out, but I think for now, oh, change my mind. She's coming out for us. Spring is very small, smaller and longer. So there we go. Just a little bit of soap scum that was holding it in there. I just used a little pin to fish it out. Very, very small, much smaller and longer than the regular production toggle. Same function, just different design. Alright, so the next step in this disassembly is going to be just like the regular model that I videoed a few months ago, several months ago. I'm just going to take and pop this receiving cup out. This little groove here is what retains this, and the knobs on the twist to open knob models. This little groove is what retains them in there. So essentially all I have to do is overcome the pressure that this is keeping this in with, and the receiving cup will pop out, and hopefully I will see the familiar 2-spring and retaining C-clip on this actuating rod. So I'm going to move over to my vise real quick and pop this out, and I will get back to you guys in just a sec. Alright everybody, I had to take a break there for a minute. This receiving cup was taking a little bit longer than I anticipated. Evidently this chrome model is much tighter than the regular production model. They usually just pop right out for me. So anyways, there it is. That's a good sign. Pretty familiar sight. Just the standard receiving cup, the washer, and these inner springs, quite a bit larger. That spring is almost twice the size as the other model is. Pretty heavy gauge too. And the inner spring, this inner spring is basically the spring that pops the doors back up when you have the lever opened. That's what keeps the doors open. So interesting. So already, looking down the shaft here, I see the same retaining clip. It's that small C-shaped ring. That's what keeps this door assembly in the razor. As you see, it's not coming out. This C-clip has two functions, one of which I've already mentioned. It keeps the door assembly inside the razor, and it provides a set point for the razors to open. So that is what gives you your opening point. I don't know how else to explain it. That's what gives you your point at which the razor doors open. So if it were any other place, it would be set here or here, but it is fully open. So the next step, just like the other toggle models, is to remove this pesky little retaining clip. This step is very, very tedious, and the only tool that I've found that works the best for taking this out is a little sewing tool. I can't remember the name. It has this little hook on the end. Anyways, this works tons better than a needle, or you can't really fit a screwdriver down in here. So I've kind of adopted this sewing tool to get these clips out of here. So I'll get back to you guys in a minute. Hey everybody, getting back with you here. I had to pause the video there for a little bit. This retaining C-clip that I was working on, it was very difficult to remove. It appears as if these little ears on the outer edges, it appears as if they're a little bit thicker, so I think that's where I ran into trouble taking this particular one off. Anyways, I fidgeted with it and got it out of there in one piece. So that will allow me now to remove the actuating rod which connects to the doors. So that is out. A quick test that I'd like to show everybody here, if you ever have a razor disassembled that's having a lazy door or a sticky door issue, take the razor head assembly in between your index finger and your thumb and spin it, and centrifugal force should open the doors up and they should fall down freely. If you have one that is lazy or sticking, it's going to stick kind of like this one just did. What that indicates is a misalignment in the door hinge arms, these things here. So if you have a sticky door, chances are you either have a bent hinge or a bent hinge arm. So all you have to do is check the squareness of your door hinges. If they're off, you just have to adjust them accordingly and your doors will swing freely as such. Just a quick tip. You can do this with the razor assembled too, it's a little bit tougher. Anyways, so as it stands, we have the lever removed with pin, the poppet spring, whatever you want to call that part, and the apparatus that travels on the tip of the actuating rod. We've removed the receiving cup, both internal springs, the C retainer, which fits in that groove right there, about halfway up the actuating rod, and we've removed the actuating rod and door assembly out of the body of the razor. So now I have to remove the head assembly from the handle or tube of the razor. As you will see, I can now press together, like I mentioned earlier, and expose about a 1/16 of a gap in between the adjuster dial base and the handle. One thing I've recognized with this model that's different than the other production toggle is this little ring. It's a decorative ring. I believe it was blued back in the day with a bluing compound, which made it appear black or dark blue. This ring has historically been attached to the handle section, and it's the same way with some of the Fat Boy models. The ring is actually part of the handle, but this toggle model is not the same case. It's actually attached to the base of the adjuster dial, so that's kind of interesting. So what my plan is now is to drive the head assembly out in the same fashion that I would any other adjustable, a red dot, Fat Boy, regular production toggle, you name it. So I'm going to head back over to the vise real quick. I'm going to leave you guys rolling real quick, and I'll see if this head will come out. I don't think I'm going to have any issues with it popping out. These usually come out pretty easily with a few blows. So I'm just going to put some oil in there again. I took another a D4 gold toggle apart the other day for this same gentleman. It was very, very clean on the inside compared to what I've seen, and it's amazing how much easier the disassembly was because it was clean on the insides. It didn't have any seizures or any mechanical issues, so it was like night and day. So stand by, gents. I will get this head popped out real quick and get back with you. So there we go. It's pretty straightforward, just like the other adjustable models. Like I said, the head just presses down into this handle tube, and I believe that this handle section is going to be much shorter than what we've seen with other models. 1.473 inches. So I think off the top of my head that is shorter than a regular Fat Boy. Happen to have one sitting right here. Take it back, it's longer. I do believe that it's shorter than the regular production toggles, however. Sometimes these parts can look different or the same. Just depends on what you're working on. So, for the head assembly, just off the bat, this is the first time I'm seeing this. This is probably the first time everyone else is too. It has a press fitting on the end, just like I had suspected. It's a little thicker than the other toggle model, but it looks more like the serial toggle press fitting, where it kind of has more of an open fitting on the end. The regular production gold toggles, they have sort of an enclosure at the end here, and it kind of hides that inner tube extension right there. Kind of covers it up, but this one you can clearly see that it's exposed. So what the plan will be for this one is to use a familiar tool. This is just a little collet that I've used in the past. It's 3/8. What I'm going to do, as I mentioned, the diameter is usually the same. I'm just going to put it around that collet like so, tighten it up, and then I'm going to lightly tap on the inside here where the extension of the T-bar, or the safety bar plate comes down. What that's going to do is it's going to separate this press fitting collet from the rest of the razor so I can pull this apart. There is a spring inside here that I can partially see, and that's what gives you your adjustment travel. That's what pushes back up on the plate. So kind of an interesting head design. It seems to be a mix between the serial toggle and the regular production toggle. Kind of an intermediate design, I guess. Anyways, I'll work on this and I'll get back to you gentlemen as soon as I have it apart. So stand by. Thank you. Hello everyone, this is Cap again with hopefully the final segment on this video. So I got into the head assembly on this thing. Turns out when I cut off my last segment, I had the following parts still connected. So this is kind of what it looked like when I signed off last. Something like that. So evidently this adjustment dial, kind of like the bottom dials, just basically unscrewed from the body. So I did that after I cut off the video, and then I was left with the adjustment dial spring. It basically just fits in there like that, so it's just kind of hanging out in there. It's got a very weird shape. I've never seen that before. Definitely a intermediate design. You wouldn't want to break that or lose it. I've made adjustment springs before and it's not really the easiest task. Here's one that I made for a regular fat boy. Kind of a crude design, but it works surprisingly well. Anyways, once I got the spring and dial removed from that assembly, all I had to do, like I said I was going to do, was to punch the lower extension of this piece out from the collet, or the press fitting, sorry. This is that press fitting. It came off fairly easy. Took about 2 or 3 blows with the 1 pound ball peen. Came right out, and the head assembly separated just like a normal production toggle did. There's the press fitting. Here is the bottom plate, safety bar plate, whatever you want to call it. It's very different from the other designs. The holes look different. This is different. The whole thing's different compared to the other models. As you can see, there's that pitting I mentioned earlier. This area on the toggles is always a bad area. I don't know why. It doesn't rub or anything like that. It just always seems to have pitting, etching, and plating wear. So anyways, that is that piece. Just like the other normal production toggle, there's a spring in between the 2 parts. That's what gives you your vertical travel when your adjustment is made. The spring is about the same size, if not the same identical spring as the other production toggles. So that's familiar. Now, this is the piece that is the most different between the two. It has the same stamping marks, or the cast mark. It's not cast, but it's the forming marks. I guess that's what I want to call it. The only difference is there's no notches, and there are these little ears that hang down. And then this little union in between the extension, this spring kind of rides against it. I'd imagine that was some kind of a design addition to make it travel only a certain distance. Kind of an interesting addition. Other than that though, it kind of looks like a serial bottom dial plate. That's what it reminds me of. Kind of an interesting design. I really wish they would have stuck with this design for the regular production series, because aside from how it looks, it's actually pretty simple. The other toggles, they're kind of a pain with regard to the adjustment mechanism. They're just packed with parts, and it just really wasn't a good fit in my opinion. But that was back in the day, in the 1950s and 60s. These designers were putting their heads together, and they came up with a surprisingly complex razor, which is fun to work on. So anyways, that's it, guys. I'm just going to lay it out real quick so you guys can get a view of the whole thing. Don't worry, I know how this all goes back together. As you guys can see, there are tons of tiny little parts. So you wouldn't want to take one of these apart in a very uncontrolled environment. So here we go. Got the actuating rod and the doors, the door assembly if you will, the bottom plate with the stamping on it. Hopefully I'm in frame here. The adjustment plate, the adjuster dial. I'll put that little spring in there so you know where that goes. Press fitting. A tiny little click spring. Little C-clip which retains the actuating rod. And the handle. Larger outer spring. Remember, this inner spring rests inside of it. It's kind of a dual purpose spring setup there. The receiving cup for the end. The toggle lever. That really tiny spring that this piece sits on top of. And finally, the toggle lever pin. Tons of parts. Tons of tiny parts. So that's it. I'm going to get these parts cleaned up for this gentleman, and I will send them over to Razor Plate so Chris can work his fancy magic on it. And when it returns, I will do some detail work on these bands here and here. So they'll be black, should be black when they get back, and then this spring will be black. And then of course the numbers and dots on the dial itself. Aside from that, there are no issues with this razor. It was in perfect alignment when it came here. The only issue that it had was some slight sticking when the doors would close. I fixed that though, so nice and smooth now. So anyways, that's the very rare chrome toggle disassembly. If you guys have any questions, you know where to find me. Thanks.